Hey everyone, have a look, this is my newest ARR Stack. As you can see, except of standard containers like Sonarr, Radarr, Jellyfin or qBittorrent, I have now added not only Bazarr, but most importantly, I have now configured Gluetun container, so my traffic can go via VPN tunnel. All these services can be deployed in 5 seconds with one simple command, docker-compose app-d. So it's very similar to what we did in previous RStack related video, but that previous RStack was a little bit smaller, and you guys asked back then how to add some additional services, like that Bazarr I mentioned, but most importantly you asked for that Gluetun container which can be added and then used to manage our VPN connection, so here it is. This video will be a little bit different though, because I don't want to just share the completed Docker Compose file with you for you to run. I want today to go through the process of building that Docker Compose file from scratch. So if you ever want to add, remove or change any containers, any services within that file, you will be able to do it yourself. You will simply understand what every single line in that Docker Compose file does, so you can change to so it does exactly what you want, yes? You can change it and adjust it however you want. But before we start building it, let me just show you how to remove current stack and how easy it is to run it again. To remove my entire stack, I will simply run docker compose down command. We'll press enter and it will stop and remove all the running containers, and will also remove the network. So if I go back to portainer, they should be, they are now gone. Only portainer is up and running, which is not part of the stack. And if I want to have my stack back up and running, I just go back, I just press up arrow because I'm lazy, and I will say app-d, press enter, and within like few seconds, not even 5 seconds, 3 seconds probably, I should have my stack back up and running. And see, the Gluetun is still starting, but if we refresh, it should be now healthy. So, okay, it is healthy now. So that's how easy it is. But we will now go through the process of building the Docker Compose file. Let me give you a glimpse of what it looks like currently. So all those services use this single file. It's docker-compose.yml. And you can see that we have all these services here. We've got the Gluetun, we've got the Jellyfin, we've got the qBittorrent, Readarr, Lidarr, Bazarr, whatever it's pronounced. My pronunciation is crap probably, but never mind. Prowlarr, and Sonarr, and Radarr, of course. But that's what we are going to build from scratch. I want you to understand every single line within that file. Alright, so let's close it. Let's remove this stack again. And I will actually remove everything, you know. I will also remove the images and I will remove even the Docker itself to really start from scratch. I mean, from nothing installed. Alright, all the stuff has been now removed. Even if I run like a docker command, you can see no such file or directory. So let's start from the scratch. First, let's run sudo apt-get update and sudo apt-get upgrade. So we will have our system up to date, and I will say -y, which will auto-answer yes to any questions, yes? So let's press enter. So that's now done. Next thing, let's install Docker. So I just run sudo apt install docker.io. But docker.io does not include docker compose commands. So that's something we have to add. I will just say docker compose, and I will also add that -y. Because we need both Docker and Docker Compose components. I just press enter and it's been installed now. So let's just wait for a while. Shouldn't take long again. Okay, well, that's not exactly unexpected. I can see failure, but I noticed that sometimes when I uninstall and install again quickly, it gives me that failure. You shouldn't get that. If you have fresh system, Docker will be fine. If, for example, when I clear that, I run systemctl status docker, it says failed. It says start request repeated too quickly. So what we can do, let me just start manually it. Start docker. Sudo, yeah. And now, if I run status, okay, now it's up and running. Sorry. As I said, it only happens when you uninstall and install it again shortly after. That's what I did. Never mind, it's now fine. So we've got Docker and Docker Compose. We can check Docker, let's say, images. We've got no images, but the command works, as we can see. And we can check the Docker Compose command. Looks like it works as well. It gives us the options available. That's fine. So that's done. The thing is, by default, all the time you work with Docker, you have to run those commands with sudo, like a sudo docker blah blah. If you don't want to run all those commands with sudo, then you have to add yourself to a Docker group. What I mean, you can run, it's optional, but it's worth to do it maybe. Who am I? When I run who am I, it will give me the name of the user that I am currently using on this Ubuntu system. So my user is Marek, yes? So I can use that user Marek and add it to a Docker group. So I run sudo usermod dash small case a, capital letter G, ag, and then Docker, and then my username, which is Marek. You have to put it, of course, whatever the output of whoami command is for you, yes, at the end. So I just press enter, and now you either have to log out and log in again, or you can run a command, which is new grp docker. This should do the trick without logging out. And both those usermod and that new grp commands are optional, so you can ignore them, but then you have to remember that all the further commands you would have to run with sudo docker blah blah, okay? But now, because I run those commands, I shouldn't be, I can run just docker. So next part is also optional, but I want to install portainer, so we will be able to clearly see our services as we saw at the very beginning. So once we have them up and running, we can see them in portainer. But that's all it is. We will not use portainer for anything else. We will use it just for showing the running services, so you can skip this part if you want to, but it's just 2 commands to install portainer anyways. It's better to Google them. Let's open the Google, and I say, what? Install portainer Ubuntu. Oh, typo, but never mind. Let's click that top link, and scroll down. And we have the deployment. That's what I need. I need this command, docker volume blah blah. Press enter. And now, second command that downloads and installs the portainer server. So here is a little copy button, if you can see it. I just press that. It's copied now, so I can paste it here. And I press enter. It says unable to find image locally, so it has to download it. But that's normal, because I removed all Docker images. So first time, on first run, Docker will also have to pull the image first, and only then it's able to run it. Pull complete. So if we go back here, and if we scroll even further, we can see we can log in by using this. I can copy again here. So I open new window, and I just paste and go. And we've got the portainer. I will just change the password. You have to set up the password. Okay, login. This password will be now used. And here we have to pick the environment, which is, we only have one, local, so we just press that. And you can see, let's click containers. We've got one, because the portainer itself is a container, yes? You can see it's up and running. But it's not part of the stack, because there is no stack name. Alright, but let's building our Docker Compose file, yes? That's the fun part. So let's Google again, maybe. Let's Google for something like Radarr Docker Compose. And we've got the image first, but what I'm really interested in is that second link from that linuxserver.io. We will click on that, because most of our services will come from them anyways. We can scroll down here a little bit, and we should have a template for Docker Compose. And we can see it's here. And I can use those 2 squares here in the top right corner to copy everything to the clipboard. So I will do that. And now, I would usually use Vim or Nano text editor, but I just wanted to show you that any text editor is fine. I will use, here we've got that text editor. And I will just paste my output here. And you can also use Notepad on Windows or TextEdit on Mac. It does not matter which one you use. You simply need some type of text editor. And what you can also do, that's what I did, I will use those hashtags. Simply, hashtag means ignore that portion. We can use that to clearly state what service we are building here, in this part of the file. And this is Radarr. That makes things a little bit clearer. And now, because it treats it as a text file, but let me show you something. If I save it, and if I save it as docker-compose.yml and click save, it will change because Ubuntu recognizes the YAML format. And look at that, this file already looks much better, I think, yes? Wouldn't you agree? So that's basically it. We've got the Radarr for now. We will leave it as it is. Let me maybe copy this portion, and I will paste it below, and I will say Sonarr. Maybe even extra space here. And we go back to Google, and we search for Sonarr now. Sonarr docker compose. We can see that Linux server.io again, so that's what we need. I will go scroll to the docker compose portion. And the thing is, we need those services, that line, we only need it once. This and that we can simply ignore, okay? What I want to copy is only this portion. That's what I'm interested in. So maybe I will use those squares, but once I go back and paste, I will simply remove those two lines. Because we have it already here in first and second line, and we only need it once in entire docker compose file. And that's our Sonarr. So what we need next? Maybe Prowlarr, yes? Prowlarr, yes, that's something we are definitely interested in. The indexer. So I say again, paste, and I say Prowlarr. We go back to our Google, and we Google Prowlarr. And again, linuxserver.io. That's what we need. Scroll down. Docker compose, services, we can see Prowlarr. That's what we need. Copy. Go back here. Paste. And remove those first two lines again. Alright, let's maybe add a little more spaces here. And now I copy Prowlarr again, paste it below. But this time, what else do we need? Well, qBittorrent, yes? I say qBittorrent. So we go back to the Google. I know it's boring already, but we say qBittorrent. linuxserver.io, qBittorrent. Scroll down. Docker compose. Copy. I know you say, geez, Mark. Boring. Okay, remove those two lines. I think last one maybe worth pasting at this stage is Jellyfin, yes? What do you think? Let me copy that. Let's add Jellyfin as well at this stage. I think I mentioned that, but I want to create a version with no VPN first, and only then, once we have it up and running, we will add VPN later on. We will see how networking changes within that service. So we will not add Gluetun at this stage, we will add it later on. So we will just search for Jellyfin now, and that, for the time being, that will be it, I think. Jellyfin, linuxserver.io, scroll down, docker compose, copy, paste, remove first two lines. And I don't know what that crap is, I don't think I've seen that before. I can't remember. Well, let me just remove it. I don't know what it is. Let's get rid of it. Not know what it is for. Published server URL. But that's basically it. We've got Jellyfin, we've got qBittorrent, Prowlarr, Sonarr, Radarr. We can save it now. So I click that save button. And if I go back here, let me clear. I have to make sure that this docker compose file is where I am. I am currently in my home directory, home Marek. And by default, this text editor will save stuff in the same home location. So if I run lsl, I indeed see this docker compose file. And it's February 18th, so that's exactly like now that I've just created it. I just run docker compose app-d now. Press enter. And it's creating the network, Marek default it called it, and it will start pulling the images. Because I don't have any Docker images on this Ubuntu. I had, but I removed them. So it will simply go through the process of pulling all the images, and once it has it, it will start running them as containers. So we just have to wait for a while. Because I can't remember how big they are, but Usually it shouldn't take long, but it might take like 2-3 minutes, I don't know. Now it's done. It took around 2 minutes, probably even not. But if we go back to our portainer, we should see them now. Oh, and they are here, up and running. And the stack name is Marek right now, yes? But you can change that stack name. If you want to call it specific way, then you can run the docker compose file. One second, let me show you. We run docker compose down. We will simply stop and remove current containers. But now it will take only a moment, because we already have images pulled, so now everything takes seconds. Let me show you, it should be cleared now. But I can run it with command docker compose, then -p, and now I can specify the name for my stack. Maybe I want to call it R, maybe capital letters, yes? Just to make sure that this is something we came up with. And I press enter now. Now it should call it, one second, let me check. So it's not, I mean, the case will always be lowercase, looks like. I didn't even know, because I've put capital letters, but you will have lower letters anyways. But yeah, that's how you can name your stack. Doesn't really matter. The thing is, this R stack works. Well, at least it's up and running. But now, right now, it's messed up a bit. And it's not very useful at this stage, let me tell you. Because we simply copy-pasted all the default configuration for each service. But our biggest issue is here, really, in that volumes block. For example, let me show you, let's go down to the qBittorrent maybe. Each line here in that volume, well, I mean for every service, you will see this colon here. And whatever is on the left side from that column, that will be your location on the disk, on the host, I mean on the Ubuntu system. Each line, it's called a bind mount. So this colon divides the two separate elements. What you see on the left side of the colon is the location on the host, means on this Ubuntu server, and what you can see on the right from the colon is the location on the container itself. So whatever container writes locally to the folder called config, so container writes to the config, but Docker actually writes that stuff to this physical location on your host operating system. In my case, it's Ubuntu. What that means, this path, let me show you something. Let's go here, let me cd to the root folder, to this first /. And now I run pwd maybe, just to show that I'm in the root folder. And if I run lsl, I can see folder called path. Well, we didn't check before, but believe me, it wasn't here. And you can even see February 18th, it was just created, it's just been created. If you compare to the previous command, you will see it's like a minute after that. This path, if I go even further, let's cd to this path. LSL, we have 2, yes? What's that 2? Well, it's this part here, path 2. If I go further, cd2, so I am now in path 2. We have all that crap. Well, this qBittorrent folder was created because of this entry here. So basically what happened, when I run that docker compose app command, Docker will simply check all those locations on the left side from colon. It will check all the locations on the host operating system, and if that location does not exist, it will simply create that folder, that location on Ubuntu for me. That's exactly what happened. Why this is a problem? Have a look at the downloads, for example. Path to downloads, yes? On the left. Here, because we are in path 2 already, this downloads, this folder is used by qBittorrent to download the files from whatever, Linux ISO or whatever, you're trying to fetch. But look at that, download client and download client downloads. If we scroll up to Radarr and Sonarr, we can see they are configured with different location on the host system. For example, Radarr says path to download-client-downloads. So it basically uses this folder. And then Sonarr has, again, very similar, but it's again different because it's path to download client, but there is no dash between download and client. So Sonarr basically uses that. What happens now? qBittorrent downloads to this folder, Sonarr tries to read from that folder, and Radarr tries to read from that one. And then another thing, you can see some of them belong to user root, group root, and some of them to Marek. If I run different command, let me clear that. lsl first, that's it, but if I run lsln, that should give you a clue, because the root folders will be the ones that were created by Docker when we run the docker-compose app command, but this one was created by the container itself. All our containers are configured here with process user ID and process group ID. They are both set to 1000. And that's exactly what we can see here. So this user Marek, has really numerical value of 1000 for user and 1000 for group. I can even check that with command ID. So you can see my user ID is Marek and I belong to a group called Marek, which has also the same numerical value. So here we have a mix and match of root user and Marek user. But if I go, for example, to .qBittorrent, we've got another app data, yes, if we go back. So yes, that's another folder that was supposed to be created, app data. So if I go to that app data, that's another folder, okay. All that stuff we can see here was written by qBittorrent in its config file. Let me show you what I mean. I can connect, maybe I will open another session. And I say docker exec -it qBittorrent sh. It's for shell. I want to open the shell. And now I go to cd config folder. So I want to check what is here on the right side. So if I run lsl, I can see another folder, but this time it's this one, and it was already created by qBittorrent, because we can see it belongs to Marek. And if I go further, we can see the same files. So container thinks it writes to that location, config qBittorrent, but it really goes through the Docker and it's written to this physical location on my Ubuntu server. So that's basically it. That's how it works. Container thinks it writes to the /config folder, but all the data is actually written to the physical location on Ubuntu server. And that's our current problem with the config. And that problem is that each of those containers read and write to different download folder. But that's fine. Let's fix it. Let's amend this file. So now let's remove the containers. I closed the terminal, but we can also remove them here, yes, from the portainer if we want to. I say stop, and I can also remove them. But well, I said that we're not going to use portainer for anything, but so I lied a bit. Let me open the terminal again. What I want to do is to go to that root folder again, where we have the path to. Let me go there. I want to remove that path. We don't need it really. So sudo remove rf path. That's it. If I run it now, there is no path. But we have to either create or use one of the existing folders to keep our downloads, where we can store our downloads, yes? And read from the same folder. All of the containers can read from the same download folder. I thought maybe we will choose that media. I think we used that before. We can use that media folder. If I go to that media, you can see, well, we can ignore this one, but we can say it's empty. This is just the image for the Ubuntu itself. So I go back to the root folder, and I say sudo make directory p means -p means also create parent folders if needed. It will not be needed, but well, if you decided to create your own folder, entire path will be created simply. And now I say r. I will press enter. So now that's what we have, yes? We've got that newly created r folder. And now we can use this folder as the host location in our docker-compose file. So let's go to the qBittorrent, and now I say it's not gonna be path2, it's gonna be media r qBittorrent I can leave, but not app data. I will change it to config. If Docker writes to the config folder, why would I call it app data? I will call it config so I know exactly what it is. And it will write to this folder. Media r, and then we will have qBittorrent and config. But that's not even most important one, because we were really worried about the downloads, yes? So I also changed this one to media r qBittorrent downloads. That's where our qBittorrent will be saving all files from now on. And we now have to match that folder in all services that are going to read from it. So I will simply copy it, this physical location. I will scroll up, and in Radarr I will replace this path with my new path. It's supposed to read from media r qBittorrent. And the same for Sonarr. Whatever qBittorrent saves in downloads folder, Sonarr can now read from that location. Same for Radarr. And I don't think there are any other services that, currently at least, that use that folder. No, qBittorrent and Jellyfin, no, Jellyfin doesn't read from that. And also remember that we are not going to change anything on the right side. This is what container uses, and we don't want to change anything on the right side from the colon. But let's go back now to the very beginning. Radarr. We've got that downloads folder sorted out, but I still have that path to Radarr blah blah something config. I don't want that path to. I want to replace that with my media r, and then Radarr, it's okay. And again, not data, I want to call it config. If it's config, then I want to call it config on the host as well. And the movies, I want to change it also to media r Radarr movies. Whatever Radarr stores in /movies folder will be saved locally on my Ubuntu here, in media r Radarr movies. So let's do the same for Sonarr now. I say media r Sonarr, and I will also call it config. Now media r Sonarr. I want to have all that stuff in Sonarr folder, and the TV series, oh, well, we can leave it. It says TV on the container side, it's TV series here. That's good enough. I will scroll further. Now we've got Prowlarr, so I say again media r Prowlarr, and I will replace it with config. So I know it's config file for, for this container. If it stores here the configuration files, why would I call it data? I don't even know. So let's go further. And we've got the qBittorrent already sorted. But now, for Jellyfin, you have to remember something. Config, we can... This is even more silly, because why would you call library? The config, no, I want to store it in config folder. But this is actually something we want to read from Sonarr and Radarr. And I know this is confusing. Remember that Sonarr is used in our stack for TV series and Radarr is used for movies. So we have to match the location of Sonarr and Radarr because we expect our files to be there. Basically how it works, we search for example for a movie in Radarr. Radarr will send that request to qBittorrent. qBittorrent will download the file and it will place it in the media r qBittorrent downloads folder. It will inform Radarr then that the file has been downloaded, and at this point Radarr will create so-called hard link in its movie folder. And that hard link will point to the file that is in qBittorrent downloads folder. And this is very confusing because some people think they have the same file in two locations. One file in media r qBittorrent downloads and the second in media r Radarr movies. But that's not the truth. The truth is Radarr in that media r Radarr movies folder only creates a hard link to already existing file, to the file that was downloaded by qBittorrent, and only creates that link, and that link does not take any space on your hard drive. So you have basically two links that point to the same file location. And we had a video about hard links and soft links. It's Linux thing, and if you want to learn more about it, please watch that video. But what it means for us, we simply have to point our Jellyfin to those locations or on Sonarr and Radarr. And again, I don't touch the right side from the colon, okay? This is what container uses, and we don't want to change this portion. We only want to change that portion. So I have to find path to the TV series. I simply go back, and I can see Sonarr, and the path to TV series, it's this. So I copy that, and I paste it, so Jellyfin can find the TV series once they are downloaded and hard link is created. And for movies, I have to scroll up, Radarr, and this path, the physical location on my Ubuntu server. I go back and I paste it here. Again, remember, you are not interested in these values at all. They are simply default values that container will use. We only change that left portion. Whew, that was a lot of changes, wasn't it? Let me just double check if we have everything as expected. I think we do. Yeah, let's see. Let's save it. Let me cd home Marek. That's my home location. That's where my docker compose file is. And we say docker compose appd. That's it. That was quick. What that means though, if I go there now again to the root folder, if I run lsl, you see that there is no path folder here. But if I go to media, we've got that R folder, so we go there. And now every service has its own folder here. And if I go to qBittorrent, for example, this folder, this downloads folder, will be used by all services, I mean by Radarr and Sonarr, because they are configured to read from that location. And you might have noticed that we again have mix and match of root created folders and Marek, yes? So we can change it by, one second, let me clear that. I can say sudo change owner chown -r, or you can run -- recursive, but you know, if you just run -r, that's shorter. So it's 1000. I want to use user 1000 and group 1000, and I want to apply that to media R folder. If I run it now, it asks me for password, because I need sudo password for that. If I run the command now, doesn't matter where I am, everything should belong now to user 1000, group 1000. I know it's called Marek, but that's irrelevant. We are talking about these numerical values, where Marek is user 1000, group is 1000. That's because every single container belongs to that group as well. Simply this group is used, whatever Docker run those containers, yes? But those containers are presented to Ubuntu system as these users. The user ID 1000 and group ID 1000 as well. That's how Ubuntu system sees every single container. And if we have all the containers with the same user ID and group ID, then we shouldn't have any problems reading and writing to any of those locations really, because they all belong already to user 1000, group 1000. And yes, that's fine, but somebody might say, Marek, but what about the VPN? Let's add the VPN, okay? Yes, let me tell you shortly how the traffic goes now. Currently, Docker uses a default bridge network, and currently our traffic goes out with our public IP address that we got from our internet service provider. But our ISP can see where all those connections go to, what's the destination IP address. So what we are going to do now, we are going to change this behavior, and we will add a Gluetun VPN container that will send the traffic, encrypted traffic, to a chosen server of our VPN provider first, and only then this traffic will be forwarded further, with the IP address also changed to that VPN provider. So when the traffic goes back, it will also go back first to our VPN provider first, and only then, as encrypted traffic, will go back to our Gluetun container. So that's how our traffic will change. But for that to happen, we need two things actually. We need that Gluetun container, And then we also need some kind of VPN provider, so a company that provides that VPN connection for us. On Gluetun we can configure it, but for example, I went for NordVPN. I mean, it's not sponsored by NordVPN, but you can choose whatever you want. The Gluetun service can be configured with like NordVPN, Surfshark, and any other popular provider. You can find templates that make it very easy to configure it. So let's first maybe Google. No, first let's get rid of those containers, okay? Okay, that's what happens when you are in the wrong directory. Okay, let's go to Google again, and this time let's Google for Gluetun. How you write it? Gluetun docker-compose. And it's not from linux.io this time. Let's click on that first link maybe from GitHub. So let's scroll down. You'll have all the explanation, what it is, blah blah. And let's go further and further. Oh, actually, it was, supports RVPN, CyberGhost, ExpressVPN, blah blah blah. As you can see, I think all most known providers are supported. So let's scroll further, and we've got the setup. And it says, here is Docker Compose for the laziest, but what we can do instead, it says, these are now instructions specific for each VPN provider. If we go to that wiki, it's Wikipedia for Gluetun, and as I said, I've got the NordVPN, yes? So I can go to providers here, setup providers, and I simply, where is that NordVPN? It's here. I just click on that, and that gives me the Docker Compose template for service provider NordVPN. And if you go with another provider, like ExpressVPN, FastestVPN, you simply click on the related link, yes? So I will copy this one, and I just paste it in my config, in my Docker Compose file. Let's paste it here. I don't need that services or version, but I will copy that so we can have clear division between those services. So that's the Gluetun already configured, but you know what I noticed? It's missing container name for some reason. I don't know why, but let's copy that. And because if we don't have container name, it will get random names. So that's not really what we need. Let me paste that, and I will say container name Gluetun, yeah? That will make it clear that our container name will be Gluetun, not some random container name. And then this, if you wonder what this is like a network administration access, because Gluetun has to configure a device called devnet-tan. So it has to have access or permissions to be able to create that VPN tunnel for us. And that's how it's done, using this cap add and those devices. And now environment, we don't have to change provider we don't have to change. The OpenVPN or WireGuard, it's your choice what you want to use. But the thing is, the most important thing is that user and password. That's something you will get from a provider. Once, for example, I signed up for the NordVPN. If I log on now to my NordVPN account, if I go to that NordVPN, if I scroll down, I've got advanced settings, manual setup. If I click on that setup NordVPN manually, I will have something called service credentials. And to get that service credentials, I have to verify email. And now I can see my service credentials for the service. So I had to pay for that. And how you obtain service credentials might, vary from provider to provider. You have to figure out where to find service credentials. This is where you can find them on NordVPN page. But if you choose different provider, you have to figure out where these service credentials can be found. So for me, they are here. So I can simply copy them. So this is username. I just copied to clipboard. My username is that. And my password is that. And server countries, this is optional. If we go back to Gluetun, it says required environment variables and optional variables. So this simply, server countries, this will simply say, you can see comma-separated list of countries. You can state what countries you want to connect to when you use that VPN. What I mean, I have it configured with Netherlands. I mean, it was configured with Netherlands by default. That means our public IP address given to us by NordVPN will always be somewhere in Netherlands. But you can add some more like, Germany or whatever, yeah, after a comma. Or you can even be more specific, because they say here, you can have not server countries, but server regions, or even server cities. You can have a list of cities where they have servers and they can give you a public IP from that location. You will see what I mean in a minute, so don't worry about it. Okay, but that's it. That's basically my config right now. Yes, that's my Docker Compose file. So I just save, and let's try to run it now. So I say docker compose app d, and let's see if it works. You can see it's pulling the Gluetun image. It says downloaded newer image, and they're all up and running now. If I go to portainer, they should be here. And I can see Gluetun is now added as well. And if I check the logs for Gluetun, docker logs Gluetun, look at that. Public IP address is whatever it is, but it's from Netherlands. That's exactly what this config does. Server countries, Netherlands. And if we disconnect and connect again, we probably get different IP address, but it will still be from Netherlands. Every time our traffic, even though I'm in UK, I mean, I can show you. Let me show you something. Let's say I do docker exec -it qBittorrent and then shell, connect to shell. If I run curl ifconfig me, you can see that I have different IP address. So this is one address and this is different IP address. Basically, well, maybe even better if I go here, just Google what is my IP. That's my IP, 92.40.98, blah blah. And you can see that I'm in England, that's correct. Country, United Kingdom. That means my Gluetun service has now a VPN tunnel between my IP and the Netherlands IP address. And that's fine, we've got that Gluetun, but right now it doesn't do anything, because we haven't routed any container traffic through that Gluetun container yet, or through that Gluetun VPN connection, okay? So let's now redirect our traffic through the Gluetun container and through that VPN tunnel. Let's get out of here, maybe clear. I say docker compose down. And to redirect the traffic through the Gluetun service, I simply add one line, and this line should say network mode service Gluetun. And that service Gluetun should be in quotation marks, alright? So I just copy that. So the Radarr will be redirected. Now let's redirect the Sonarr, Prowlarr, qBittorrent, and Jellyfin we can ignore really. Jellyfin mainly just reads the data from those volumes, yes, but it doesn't do much networking, so we can leave it as it is. Doesn't really matter. But what we have to do next, all those ports that we can see, like every service has its port, yes? For example, Radarr has port 7878 on the host and 7878 on the container side. And it's used, for example, this host port 7878, it's used when I want to connect to that service. So I would type http localhost 7878. That's how I would connect to the Radarr. Well, it's down now, so I can't connect, but basically that's how it used to work. But now, because we changed that network mode, now the Gluetun is the service that deals with our networking, alright? So that means we have to get rid of those ports from here, and we have to paste them as part of Gluetun configuration. So let me cut it from here. This is for Radarr, yeah? So I will go down to Gluetun, and I will paste it, doesn't really matter, somewhere here maybe. Ports 7878, and I will add information that this was Radarr, wasn't it? Yeah, that was Radarr, but I have to do it for other containers as well. Any container that was passed through Gluetun, I will have to remove this port from here. So this is the Sonarr. I have to remove it from here and paste it as a Gluetun configuration now. We've got Radarr Sonarr. Now Prowlarr. Cut it from here and we paste it there. I'm just making a note which service it belongs to, so it's easier to find it later on. That was the Prowlarr and qBittorrent. qBittorrent has 3 ports because it has web GUI, which I mean that's how we connect to the qBittorrent, but it also has torrenting port and we have to remove them all from here. So we paste it here as well. Alright, I think that's it. So let's save it and let's see if it still works. I will use up arrow, docker-compose app, -d. Press enter. And they are up and running. So again, let's see if the traffic goes actually through the VPN tunnel. Let me remind you, this is my IP address, 9240 it starts with, yes? So 9240 is my IP address with no VPN, and I'm in England. If we run docker logs Gluetun, I think that address might be the same as previously, but it's still different address than mine, and its location is Netherlands. But what we can do now, let's maybe docker exec it, so we connect to maybe Sonarr, to shell sh, press enter, and now I do curl ifconfig me. And we can see IP address from that Netherlands. That means the Sonarr's traffic goes through the VPN tunnel. If we want to compare it, let's maybe exit. I run again docker exec it, but for Jellyfin. Remember, we didn't touch Jellyfin. We didn't redirect Jellyfin's traffic through the VPN. We left it as it was. So if I run on Jellyfin curl ifconfig me, Jellyfin doesn't go through VPN. It shows me my actual IP address from England. And last but not least, let's see if those ports work at all. For example, Radarr 7878, yes? Can I connect locally to Radarr? So it's localhost 7878. Let's press enter. And yes, this is the landing page. As it's the first time we log in, we have to configure the credentials, username and password. And let's check maybe what? qBittorrent 8080. So I say http://localhost:8080. And we've got qBittorrent web UI. And by the way, remember that to first log on to qBittorrent, you need to use user admin, but the password you can get from the logs. Docker logs qBittorrent. A temporary password is provided, and it's that. 5H whatever. That's how you first log on, and you have to change the password here within that GUI. But we went through that process in the previous ARR Stack video. Now little task for you. Try to add the remaining services, like Bazarr, Lidarr or Readarr for example, and see if you can do it yourself now. Try to do it yourself first, and if you are not sure if your file is correct or no, only then try to download the completed Docker Compose file from my GitHub, or you can also download it as PDF this time, straight to your email. It's free of charge, of course, and you will find links below. You can even improve that Docker Compose file further. We could use, for example, variables and .env file. That's something we used in previous video about ARR Stack. We also went through the process of configuring each of those services in graphical user interface, so you might want to watch that video again. And also remember that if you want to learn more DevOps, cloud or any other IT related stuff, then please visit our Automation Avenue learning platform, and you can find hours and hours of very useful training videos there. So that's it, that's all I wanted to show you today, so I hope that all makes sense, and thank you for watching. Marek.